So we're going to continue with our series, "'Tis the Season," and I don't know. I'm gonna just tell you a little thing about me that many of you may not know. Is I don't like to share my emotions very much. I know that comes as a shock to a lot of you. I'm just not an emotional person. I take that back. I'm an emotional reactor. Can I just be honest? Maybe this is therapy with a microphone. I'm an emotional reactor. Where I feel the emotion, I don't process the emotion, I act on the emotion. Anybody in the house like that today? Don't point at anybody, right? That you just kind of do that, but I don't process it, and I surely don't want to interact with it. In fact, I feel it really big. In fact, when I was a kid, my dad used to tell me, and man, I hated it. Oh, I hated it. He used to tell me, "Son, you wear your heart on your sleeve." It's like, I know you are, but what am I? Like, I don't even know what that means, Dad. And I said, I wear my heart on my sleeve because I do, but I don't. What I've noticed is I don't process my emotions. I don't work through uncomfortable emotions. I just feel it and respond. And I noticed as I got older, that's something I don't want to do, and I want to get away from doing that type of thing. And I don't know about many of you, if anybody in the house is like that, but I like to handle things on my own. Surely don't want to take my emotions to anybody else. I don't want to, because to me, if we're just being honest, what I thought for a long time was, hey, this makes me feel kind of either weak or like I need help in some place I shouldn't need help. I should just be able to figure this out. I don't need to process this with anybody. I don't need to work through this with anybody. I can just carry it on my own. And I mean, I grew up that way. And then when I got into the Marine Corps, I know this is going to be a shock to you also, but the Marines is not really a touchy-feely organization. They're just not. They don't really help you process emotions at all. They give you traumatic brain injury and PTSD and then tell you not to kill yourself or anybody else when you get out. That's kind of like the breadth of the emotional support you get in the Marine Corps, which don't get me wrong. They need people like that, and they need to exist and all of that, but there's not a lot of support on the emotional side of all those things. And so I never really learned how to deal with it for a long time and how important it was to interact with some of the more uncomfortable emotions. Because we're all real good at handling happiness, right? We all know how to handle happiness. We love handling it. It's the best part. And we all are pretty familiar with anger, right? We all pretty well know how to deal with anger. And some of us, maybe we don't know how to deal with anger, but we have anger and we kind of, can manage it a little bit. We got it figured out. But there's some emotions that we just avoid. There's some emotions that we don't want to touch. There's some emotions that the minute it comes up, you're like, "Ew, get that away from me. I don't want to feel that." And if you're anything like me, when you get some of these emotions, you take them and you kind of crumble them up. Like if you write them on a sticky note, you crumble them up and kind of stick them in your pocket because you don't want to deal with it. Because it's too big of a thing to deal with. And you don't want to process it and you don't want to work with it, so you're just like, "Ugh, yuck." Or you're like, "I don't know what to do with that." And you kind of crumble it up and throw it over your shoulder. And then it's roaming around in the room and you kick it every so often and you bump into it. And you go, "Oh, there's that emotion. Not going to deal with it. What are you going to do? Get out of here." And that's just kind of how we handle it. And in our culture, there's not a support for us handling these emotions. And especially in the church, some of these emotions we work through, they're not something that we're allowed to feel in the church. That in fact, the emotion we're going to talk about today is something that we've all felt. It's a universal emotion. And the minute I say it, a lot of you are going to say, "I should have skipped today." Like a minute I talk about it, you're going to be like, "Man, why did I choose today? I should have came to church last week." Well, you couldn't. We had to close for snow. So you made it this week. But this emotion that we're going to talk about is uncomfortable. And it's not one we're even allowed to feel in the Christmas season. Because let's be honest, you're busy, right? You're so busy. You got so much going on in the Christmas season. You don't have time to deal with some of these things. You certainly don't have time to process any of this, right? The kids need presents. The Christmas party, the Christmas party's going on. You got to be at the Christmas party. You've got multiple Christmas parties maybe. Maybe you're leading a staff or you're leading a group of people. Maybe you're going to be, God bless you, hosting Christmas this year in your family and everybody's coming over to you. And so you started cooking 3 days ago, right? Or maybe you're just preparing to go and travel and you're just so busy you probably don't have time to process some of these emotions. And I get that. I understand. But there's a problem when we don't process some of them, especially the one we're going to talk about today. Then when you don't process the emotion we're talking about today, it's going to leave a hole in your soul. It's going to leave a hole inside of you that's going to cause pain further down the line if you don't interact with this emotion right now. Because Christmas season is supposed to be so much fun. And it's supposed to be so happy and it's supposed to be great, except, let's just be honest. This is going to be the first Christmas without mom here. This is going to be the first Christmas without dad. This is going to be the first Christmas without your wife. Or maybe the first one without your husband. Or maybe it's the 10th one and it doesn't get easier any time. And every time this time of year comes around, everybody else is joyous and happy and excited. And yet there's always something inside of you that maybe feels a little empty. Because 'tis the season to be jolly, I should be joyful, I should be all these things, but it doesn't feel that way for me. Because for some of us in this room, this season is anything but joyful. Because it kind of bubbles to the top and reminds us of what we've lost. Dan Allender, a Christian psychologist, he says that it's grief. That it's grief. And grief is the discrepancy of what is and what's meant to be. So what something currently is and what it should be. Because if we're just being honest, we all know that we shouldn't be without some of the people we love the most. You shouldn't be without your husband. You shouldn't be without your wife. You should not be without your mother, and you should not be without your father or your son or your daughter or that relationship. You shouldn't be without those things. And you know that, and your heart knows that, and that's what grief is. Grief is the discrepancy, the gap between what's meant to be and what actually is, because this is the truth of it. It's a result of a fallen world, and it's a result of sin. It's a result of the fallen world that has caused these things to happen, to where you don't have mom this season, or you don't have dad this season. And maybe it's the first time, or maybe it's the 50th time, but every time you come close, to this time of year, it just kind of, and maybe you don't have words for it, it just kind of hurts. And maybe they're still with us, but they're not the parent you wanted them to be. Or maybe that marriage is just totally gone and you lost the entire thing. And this is the first year you're doing it as a single parent. Because 'tis the season to be jolly, except, Brandon, what happens when I'm not? What happens when I'm dealing with some stuff that's a real problem? There's a story in the Bible that directly talks about grief. And it's a story that we're all familiar with. And what I don't want you to do is when we talk, I don't want you to jump right to the end of the story, okay? I want you to stay with me when we start talking about it and work through this story with me. Because as soon as I bring it up, you're going to know where it is, and you're going to say, I already know where he's going. I don't want to hear it. I want to go home, right? I get it. And the stuff we're talking about today is going to make you so uncomfortable, and I don't apologize at all. I'm glad you came, because it needs to happen. Today we're going to be studying something in John chapter 11. In John chapter 11, if you remember 2 weeks ago, we gathered and we talked about two folks that had different reactions to Jesus and different reactions to pressure. It was Mary and it was Martha. If you remember, Martha was the one running around the house, and everything was urgent and needed to be handled right now. Everything needed to be processed, handled, and moved on. And maybe you're one of those people where you just got to get it and move on, and you're just, everything's urgent. But then we have Mary. Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus, learning from him, while Martha's running around getting everything together. If you remember, Martha goes to Jesus and says, Jesus, tell Mary to do something. She's daggone lazy. She needs to get up and do something. I'm doing all the work in the house. And Jesus says, Martha, you worry about so much. But you don't need to worry about that stuff. There's only one thing you need to worry about. And see, Mary has chosen what is better. And so we're going to revisit Mary and Martha, but this time in a different context. Things have changed. Now Lazarus, their brother, has gotten sick. And word has come to Jesus that Lazarus is sick. And we know that Jesus loved Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. In fact, John, the apostle John, writes it in his gospel. He says that the Lord loved them, that Jesus loved Mary loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So we know that Jesus loves them. In fact, some people think that they may have been childhood friends. So we know that the Lord loves them. And in that space, the Lord loves them, and he's there, and he's for them, and all of the things there. Jesus, when he finds out that Lazarus is sick, he waits. Very interesting. Probably a totally different sermon. But he waits 4 days before he goes to meet them. And then he does. He goes to meet them. In fact, one of the things they run into is in this moment, or right before this moment, they had just really made the Pharisees and religious leaders mad. And so there's some of those people around Bethany and Jerusalem were trying to kill Jesus. And Jesus had just fled that area. And he says, hey, we need to go back and talk to Lazarus and Mary and Martha. And one of the apostles, Thomas, comes up and he says, wait a second, Lord, I don't know if you've noticed, but they kind of want to kill you there. You ought not go. And then Jesus goes, cool, man, we're going to keep moving. Like, appreciate your feedback. We're still going to go. And then Thomas, was so funny about Thomas, he says, all right, everybody, I guess we should go and die with him. He's going to get killed. We're all going to get killed. I guess we might as well get killed together. That's Thomas's reaction. So they go to Bethany. And it's a long journey to Bethany. And he gets to Bethany, and on his arrival, the text tells us that Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. So he got word that he was sick. He waited, he tarried, and then by the time he gets there, Lazarus is dead. The mourning process had been over, and he was in the grave for 4 days. In fact, the King James Version says he stinketh, just so that we make sure we know how bad it was. Now, Bethany, it continues, was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem. This is important because this is the last thing Jesus does before the Passion Week. He does this, and this royally ticks off the religious leaders, and this sends him over the edge with him. It was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many of the Jews had come to Mary and Martha to comfort them in their loss of their brother, because it was a communal thing. It wasn't that you handled grief independently, quietly, and went to your room and cried by yourself. It was meant to be handled as a group. And I'll be honest, our American culture does not do a good job of this. When somebody you love passes away or you lose them, the expectation is that you process it, right? You bury the body, then what do? Well, after that, you kind of just move on. That's the expectation. Is you bury them, and then you got like a couple days, and you got a couple days you could be sad, but after that, everybody forgets about it and life keeps going. Regardless of whether that was your sister or your brother or your mom or maybe even your kid. And they say, hey, here, process it real quick and then move on with life. That's not how we were supposed to do it. And that's not how they did it in the ancient world. In the ancient world, it was a thing. Everybody came together. It was an all skate. Everybody was part of it. And so the Jews came from the city down with them. And when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed home. Again, you see the personalities again. Remember, Martha was the one running around the room like, hey, we got to get this figured out. We got to put this here. We got to do this here. We got to do this here. We got to do this here. Mary, quit being lazy. Do this. She's moving around. But then Martha's the one who runs to meet Jesus. Mary stays home. And when Martha arrives to meet Jesus, she shows up, she arrives and sees him, and she says this. She says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. If you had been here, if you had showed up, if you were present, my brother would not have died. But I know, she continues, but I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Whatever you ask, Lord, I know God will give it to you. And then Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. To which she immediately thinks, I know. Giving me the preacher talk now. Because she turns around and she says, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection of the last day. I appreciate the preacher talk, Jesus. I really do. And I know he's going to rise on the last day, I hear. That's like if somebody comes in, it's like they lose a family member and the pastor goes up and says, it's okay, you'll see him in heaven. Like, that's not helpful. And that's not what Jesus is saying. That's what she thinks he's saying. That's not what he's saying. What Jesus is saying is something totally different. In fact, he goes right after it, after this. I think he gets down and on her level, and I think he kind of grabs her by the arm and wants her to get this next point. He looks at her eyeball to eyeball, and he says, I am. You've heard about it's coming. It's a one day. It's a thing. We'll get there. I am the resurrection and the life. And I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. Hold on, Jesus, time out. What do you mean? Even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? And it initially seemed like preacher talk, but now he's talking messianic talk. Now he's talking Messiah. Now he's talking the resurrection kind of conversation. He says, do you believe this? Do you understand this? His whole point in that whole little poetry thing going on there that kind of trips us up when we read it is that because I'm here, Mary, death no longer has a hold on you. In fact, Martha, now that I am here, death has been weakened. Death doesn't hold that type of sting anymore because death does not have a hold on you anymore, Martha. Now that I am here, the resurrection and the life, Jesus says, death doesn't weigh the same. It's not eternal. It's not there like that anymore. And I'm going to demonstrate my power over it in just a minute. And in this statement is hope. Everybody else had lost hope. Jesus breathes hope into their situation. Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who's come into the world. I know it. I believe it. Absolutely, no doubt in my mind. This is interesting because there's a lot of faith. There's also a lot of pain. You notice that? That the presence of pain did not somehow get her to believe that there's an absence of God or an absence of Christ. I mean, she even shows up and says, Lord, if you were there, I know you could have done it. You're just busy. You weren't able to get there. I understand. But there was faith that he could do it, but understanding that he just didn't. So I say all that to say that those two things can exist at the same time. Your pain and your faith can and should coexist. They should share spheres together. They should touch one another. That's the expectation, that your faith and your pain work together. He continues. After she said this, she went back and called to her sister Mary. And she said, the teacher is here and is asking for you. Teacher is here and he's asking for you. And when Mary heard this, she got up and she quickly went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. So Jesus hadn't gone into the city yet. He's right on the edge of the city, waiting. Right on the edge, waiting for Mary and Martha to come in. And when the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to mourn there, because that was the expectation. You'd go to the tomb, you'd mourn some more. But when Mary reached the place where Jesus was, they weren't expecting Jesus to be there. When they met the place where Jesus was, she fell at his feet. Again, the same posture she had when he was teaching is the same posture she has when she's hurting, is at the feet of Christ. The same posture when she's learning is the same posture she's experiencing when she's in pain. And so she shows up and she falls to him and she says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Which means that her and Martha have talked about this. This was a conversation they probably had. I mean, Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. At this point, they probably have sat and said that same exact phrase to one another. Over dinner, man, I can't believe Jesus, if he was just here, we would, Lazarus, We've seen him walk on water. We've heard him feed 5,000. We've heard of him raising a girl from the dead, not even in the same vicinity as her. I mean, we've seen all sorts of things. If he had just been here. Let's pause real quick. You've had moments like that too, right? Where you sat and you said, Lord, if you were just present, this wouldn't have ended this way. Maybe it was in a hospital room. And you thought, Lord, if you're just here, they won't die. Your faith and your pain are existing at the same moment. You said that before related to your marriage. Lord, if you were here, I wouldn't have experienced this. Lord, if you were here, this pain wouldn't be this way. Maybe you do that with the trajectory of your life. You say, Lord, if you were here, my dad wouldn't have been that way. My mother wouldn't have been that way. I wouldn't have suffered the pain that I did if you had just showed up. And you can hear the rawness in Mary's voice, the pain in her voice in this text. But you can also hear her faith. If you'd been here, I know it would have been different, but if you'd been here. And when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who come alongside her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. He did not like seeing what he saw. He didn't like that somebody he loved was in pain. He didn't like that a friend that he cared about was going through this. And so he asked, where have you laid him? Come and see, Lord, she says. And she shows him. They go into the village. Now, the tomb is probably just a cave. They probably had some money. They were a moderately wealthy family. The fact they even have a tomb meant that they had some money. So there's a family tomb there. And they probably just took the body and placed the body inside of the cave. And that's where he was. And Jesus, they probably, just roll a stone in front of it. And that's just kind of what it is. And so Jesus is like, where is Lazarus? He takes him to the tomb. And when Jesus arrives at the tomb, this is what's powerful. I see Jesus. Now, this is because I was a kid, and I think the first time I read this, I was maybe 15, 16, and I grew up watching Dragon Ball Z and Superman and all of those superhero stuff. I thought it was really cool. Love that stuff. And when I read this the first time, I thought, I've seen this arc before. I've seen this episode. Jesus is going to show up, and when he shows up, man, he's going to do something crazy. And when he does something crazy, he's going to say something. He's going to go Super Saiyan. He's going to fly through that rock. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be big because the buildup here, the tension that's being built is huge, and anybody that reads or writes stories knows what's happening here. And the expectation is that he's just going to do something. He's going to blow the top off. I mean, he's walked on water. He's fed 5,000. How is he going to bring Lazarus back from the dead? What's he going to do here? It's not the first thing he does. What he does when he arrives at the tomb, this is so powerful. This is one of the most powerful verses in the entire Bible, especially if you let it penetrate your heart. Because you can steel man it, you can block it, you can keep it from happening. But when you let it penetrate your heart, I'm telling you, it's one of the most powerful verses in the entire Bible. Christ, who knew the outcome, knew the situation, knew what was going to happen, was present in the moment, showed up, and he wept. He didn't blow through the rock and save Lazarus right away. He didn't dismiss their pain. He didn't ignore their pain. He showed up in their pain. Not only did he show up in their pain, he sat and cried with them. Because of the gap of what was meant to be and what is. That he sat there with them and he wept. And it's in that tension that we find our one point that we got to focus on today. Here's the thing, if you don't get anything else, I want you to know this. Jesus didn't have to go out of his way to go back to Mary and Martha. He didn't have to. If he wanted to raise Lazarus from the dead, he could have done it from across the country. He didn't need to go see them. He didn't need to sit and wait at the village and let Martha come to him and then let Mary come to him. Now remember, he moved 4 days. He traveled 4 days to get there. And then he waited to move at their pace. They came and got him, and then they took him to the tomb. He didn't have to do all of that. He was very intentional. Because here's the thing, if you don't remember anything else, this is what I want you to remember. Is that when you're in pain, God's presence draws close. When you're in pain, Jesus goes out of his way to meet you at that tomb, wherever it is. If it's the tomb of your marriage, if it's the tomb of your family members, if it's the tomb of a relationship, if it's the tomb of a job, if it's the literal tomb of a family member, Christ goes out of his way to meet you in that place. And he's not afraid of it, and he doesn't run away from it, and he shows up and he puts his arm around you and he cries with you. And he says, I'm here. And no, it's not always going to be a Lazarus story. But grief is something that we're meant to deal with. You're never going to fully process it. I mean, my wife has explained it this way, that grief is kind of like a big ball. And your life and you are kind of like this square. And this ball is floating around inside of this square. It's this big ball, and at first it's huge. And it touches all four corners of the square. It touches all sides of the square. It's big, it's uncomfortable, and it hurts. And over time, through processing and work and time giving it to the Lord and working through with people, the ball gets smaller. It never fully goes away. It's still going to bump into the edges. It's still going to bump into the sides. It's still going to hurt. Still going to have moments that it hurts. But it does get smaller. So it's never fully going to go away. But in that pain, God's presence is close. It draws near to you. He chooses to be near to you. In fact, I had a friend who was a 2-time cancer survivor. And the second time with cancer, through the chemo and radiation and all the stuff he was dealing with, and he had everything to live for. We were sitting in his truck, and he said, yeah, man, I don't know. It's just something about when I'm sick. Remember, it's the second time with cancer. It's like something about when I'm sick, I feel the presence of God. And he pointed over his shoulder. He is right here. I was like, aren't you afraid to die? He goes, yeah, I'm afraid to die, but God's presence is right there. I don't know what to do with that, man. The amount of faith you have mixed with the amount of pain that you're experiencing. Because that's what it looks like to grieve. We don't grieve as the world grieves, the Apostle Paul writes in Thessalonians. The world grieves without hope. We grieve with hope because Christ is the resurrection and the life. And because we don't grieve alone, our God sits with us in our pain. Our God sits with us in the discomfort. Our God shows up when things hurt. He just does. Brene Brown, I like the way she talks about pain and talks about grief. It puts it into context. She says, grief seems to create losses within us that reach beyond our awareness. We feel as if we're missing something that was invisible and unknown to us while we had it, but once it is now painfully gone. Longing for it is not a conscious wanting. It's an involuntary yearning for wholeness, for understanding, for meaning, and for the opportunity to regain or even touch what we've lost. And in that explanation, and in that you don't even know that you missed something as bad as you did, as her point, you don't recognize how much it's going to hurt till it hurts. Christ shows up, meets you at the tomb, and weeps with you. And in our culture, we're meant to bury it, not process it. Don't work through it. It's too painful. Hey, crumble it up and throw it away. Don't process it. Don't even sit in it. But this is the truth of it. Sitting with your pain is part of grieving. You have to sit in it. And believe me, I am the king of not wanting to sit in it, okay? I have no desire to sit in pain. I will avoid it like the plague. I'm just telling you right now, I will avoid it. I don't want to sit in it. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But we have to sit in it for just a moment. And here's the deal. I know that you hear all this and you go, wow, that's really inspiring, Brandon. I don't know what my steps are to kind of process this. I hear you. So from this story, we learn a few things. We learn that we need to bring our pain to the Lord. Because for many of us, if you're like me, like I said, you don't process emotions with God. You keep them close. You keep them tight. You don't want to share. You want to keep them close. Because God's busy. He's a busy God. Got a lot of things going on, saving the world and stuff. I'm I'm just dealing with this. I don't want to bring it to God. Your first step is to bring it to the Lord. That means showing up and saying, hey, God, here it is. I don't know what to do. I'm mad at you. I'm angry at you. I'm frustrated. This is Mary and Martha showing up saying, if you had been here, you have to do that. You have to do that. God's big enough. I don't know if anybody's told you this. God's big enough for you to be mad at him. He's big enough for you to be mad at him. He's big enough for you to be mad at him and for you to work through it and come back and say, I still don't understand, but I love you and I appreciate that you were there while I was mad. He's big enough for you to be mad at. And then this is only the part of it. We have to bring our pain to God, but there's something else we have to do. And this is the one that nobody likes to do. This is the one that everybody will avoid, that we all hate. And the minute I say it, you're going to be like, oh, golly, man, I should have skipped today. I didn't want to come to church today anyway. If when I say it, you're not going to like it. In fact, look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor, say, pastor loves you. Tell them, preacher loves you. They got to know it. It's really important that they know this next, because they're not going to like it. And this is the hardest thing to do. This is the hardest thing to do. The hardest thing to do is you bring your pain to God, which is easy, right? We're cool. We bring our pain to God, but you got to bring it to others. That's the pain. That's the problem, is when you have to bring your pain to God and others. And I get it. If you're anything like me, you're like, yo, I will pray. I'll bring it to God. Cool, whatever, fine. That sucks. That means I got to process it a little bit, but whatever. I'll bring it to God. Brandon, you got to bring your pain to somebody else. That's where I draw the line. That is my problem. That ain't your problem. That's how I think. It's my problem. You don't have to deal with it. I have to deal with it. You don't have to go through it. I have to go through it. And for me, I don't know about you, but for me, and some of you too, probably feel like I don't want to be an inconvenience. Because it's not your weight to carry, it's mine to carry. But here's the deal. We see it in the story. Christ goes out of his way to help them carry the weight. He goes out of his way to sit with them in the pain. And the Jews came from Jerusalem up to Bethany to help them go through this. Because you are not meant to experience this pain alone. You're meant to do it with a group of people. You're meant to do it with God, and you're meant to do it with God's people. And this is the most challenging part of this entire thing, is that teaching right there. So here's the deal. I'm going to invite the band up here, and we're going to close service just a little bit differently than we normally do.